Hello, everybody. My name is OD. I am the executive director and host of On the Air Sickled, and you're listening to a special segment called Dr. Simone Says, coming at you right now.
Misunderstood, hurt, depressed,
forgotten, hopeless, anxious,
agonizing daily discomfort.
These are the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of people living with a rare disease called sickle cell.
Warriors that need their voices heard when no one will listen. Warriors
that need support navigating the medical system.
Warriors that need leaders who can speak eloquently and with confidence. It's time to lift every voice.
It's time to lift every voice for the warrior.
I am a voice.
I am a voice.
Brought to you by the partners of On the Air Sickled and Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the show. Listen, I'm so excited to do this one more again. It is Dr. Simone Says. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Our resident doctor, partner of On the Air Sickled, and sponsor of today's episode is coming to you from SCMA. And I just want to say a special thank you to Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy. They are the ones that you need to call if you are being admitted or if you have overnight stay into the emergency room. Let them talk to your doctor. Let them talk to your nurse. Let them navigate the situation on your behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, that is SCMA. And without further ado, I want to bring in our guest for the evening, Dr. Simone Uwan. She is the co-founder of Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy. And today she's going to be talking to you about something very, very special. That's right, her SCMA 2025 courses. You want to sign up now and register. Let's bring her on so that we can talk a little bit more. Hey, Dr. Simone, how are you?
Hi, Aunt-Ma, how you doing?
Welcome back to your segment.
Thank you
for partnering with us. And you know what? I'm not even going to wait. I want to dive right into it. I am a beneficiary of the SCMA courses as a healthcare navigator. 10-week course. It can be grueling if you don't do it right. But it's lots of fun. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about, the things to say and not to say, and how to go about, having a positive attitude, even in the most difficult situation. Talk to us a little bit about the courses, when they start. What are we doing this year?
Well, this year is going to be a very special year because Florida, the state of Florida, has given us funding, but it is contingent upon us having a lot of Florida residents be a part of the class. So we have a class called the Healthcare Navigator Certification Training. And it is a certification course. It's not just a certificate of completion. The difference is you don't just get a certificate. You do have to have, you do get to take quizzes after several modules, and we go over the modules and study together. We want people to graduate, so we're not like a stumbling block for people. We actually help you study for the exams, but there is a midterm and a final, and so when you graduate, you are certified by me. There's also a HIPAA certification. So you receive a HIPAA certification. And what you're learning is all of the guidelines. You're learning all of the guidelines that determine how someone with sickle cell disease in a crisis, in a pain crisis, should be handled. What should happen? What kind of IV fluids they should have, how long they should wait, how often you should reassess once you start treatment. And all of those things are a part of what they call the NIH or ASH guidelines. So they're guidelines from the National Institutes of Health and the American Society of Hematology, and now even American College of Emergency Physicians. They all have similar guidelines, but there are guidelines out there. And for some reason, the doctors don't usually remember the guidelines. Maybe they go to conferences, hear about it, put it in their back pocket, and then when the time comes, things happen so suddenly and quickly that they don't always know what to do. And they may even remember or may even forget the source of the information. So they don't know where to go back. And so we're finding a lot of patients that have substandard care that actually ends up causing them to wait longer and have more tissue damage on the inside. And so when people end up dying early, it's not really because of sickle cell disease itself, but because of how it's managed. So we are endeavoring to teach people, since the healthcare providers are forgetting, our community, we want to remember, because we want to help people live their big, beautiful lives. And so we teach people what to remember, and then we pair them up with patients. And then patients are going to the emergency room or the hospital. They call that navigator. They're called Sickle Cell Healthcare Navigators. The patient calls that navigator, and that navigator calls ahead and kind of greases the path for them so that it makes everything smoother and they get in on time. They don't have to wait for hours in the emergency room, things like that. And so we offer that course twice a year. And normally we have to raise funding from every place for everyone. We have 92 navigators that we've trained over the past 3 years in small groups of like 15 to 20, and we do that twice a year, but we're up to 92 now, spread across 23 states, which is awesome, right? But as you know, there are way more patients, and we want it to be where a patient can have their very own navigator. So, we got a lot of work to do. So we have a lot more navigators to train, and we're inviting people to come out and train with us, and especially if you live in Florida, because you have absolutely nothing to pay. Everything is included, including my 2 books, because they are a recommended part of the course, and I was able to incorporate that into the budget and present that, and it was covered. It was accepted and was covered. And so you can have my 2 books. You have a uniform. Thank you very much. That's my first book, my baby. It's called A Doctor in a Patient's Body, Dreaming Big with Sickle Cell Disease and Chronic Pain. And so there's that. And then the second one is called, look at you, All Rise.
Listen, Dr. Simone, you can't be on Air Sickled and not be prepared to air it all, okay?
That's awesome, though. It's the second book is called All Rise, The Sickle Cell Community versus the Medical Establishment. It was written to providers to help them understand more about how to manage sickle cell disease, but it's in the verbiage of a layperson, so that we don't exclude our sickle cell patients. We want them to know what we're telling the doctors. And yes.
Let me ask you a question. So as you spoke about a layperson. So you mean to tell me that literally someone can come with no experience, come to SCMA, learn about sickle cell and the process, become a nationally certified navigator, and then go on behalf of, a patient who's having a medical crisis and be able to communicate on their behalf? No experience?
Listen, I had a person call and say, I didn't go to school. I didn't graduate from high school. Can I take the course? And I said, of course you can take the course. As long as you're able to keep up, you can take the course. And we try to help you keep up, right? Because we want you to be out there. So we're doing everything we can to support you, to help you keep up. And then when you finish, it's not like you're alone. You are actually training under our providers. So we have about 5 nurses now, 5 nurses and 2 doctors. And we take turns. One person is on every day, and we are covering the navigators. So the navigators start out by going with their patient, getting the information, and then they bring it back to the provider. The provider will listen to what's going on, and together they will call the patient's nurse, speak to the nurse, express whatever the dissatisfaction may be, and then if it can be resolved at that level, great. If not, we ask that the doctor be paged, and we actually have the doctors call our providers and work things out, and we keep the navigator in the loop so that they can build and over time learn how to themselves do some of these things. So they may come in with no experience, but eventually they are listening, they are learning, and they're gaining experience. And there's nothing that builds experience like actually doing it, like just doing it. Fumble all you will, just do it, because that's when things start to fall into place. And it's like riding a bicycle, when they fall into place, they stay there, So yes, anybody can come.
And can you talk about, I know just working closely with you with the courses, there might be some anxiety about, learning styles, right? And how someone who might not be as great on the computer or may not be as eloquent, or maybe they just receive information, differently. How can we accommodate them?
Okay, that's a great question. We actually just had a situation where I was teaching, it wasn't for this course, I was teaching community health workers about sickle cell navigation. And one of the young women, I asked her if she had dyslexia because I sensed something was off. But sometimes people are proud and they don't want to tell you what's going on, but you can see that they're kind of falling behind everyone else. And so I reached out to her separately and I said, I'd like to have you take the test verbally. And at first she was insisting on taking the test, with everyone else. So she took the test and she didn't pass. And and she was devastated. I said, let me do it one-on-one with you. And she said, you would do that? You would take your Saturday and do that for me? And I said, yes, I want to see how you do. And so we actually were able to do that for her. And when I was done, she said, I passed. Oh my goodness, I passed. And she actually passed comfortably. And it was amazing, like, to look at her before and after, because her pre-test was so low, but it's because she tried to do it like everyone else. And I really think she has dyslexia. And so, but when I read them to her, it made sense. And she was able to select the right one and she was able to pass the class. So we have a teaching assistant that would, we would set up separate times for that. We have tech support that we set up specific times during the week that if you need tech support, you can, if you, allow for, just giving us a minute and lining things up, we will get you an appointment so that you could get your needs met and you will not fall behind. We make sure that, we help. If you say, I'm falling behind, I'm scared, we try to work with you to make sure that you feel good when you go into the exam.
And Dr. Simone, you have, years of experience as a physician and, of course, a lifetime of experience as a sickle cell warrior. Tell me a little bit about, how this concept of the course started. I really want people to understand, like, this is as a foundation, and now you said you were 3 years in.
This year, August will be our 4th year. It's crazy to even think that we're we're going to be 4 years. We're not there yet. We're going to be 4 years old is wild. But, it just started as a dissatisfaction. Like, I was, on Facebook in the different support groups, because I myself needed, support, on the days when you feel blue because things are, falling apart and you had plans, but your body decided that it will do something different. And, I was looking for support. And as I was looking for support, I started seeing or hearing other people and their stories, and people started saying things like, these were groups where it's safe because it's all of us, it's right. Locked out, it's private, or locked in, it's private. And so, in those safe spaces, people would bring recordings of themselves where doctors were speaking to them so rudely, or that security was being called on them because they were crying too loudly, and they were considered disturbing the peace. And meanwhile, they're in pain. and they're not getting enough medication for the pain. And so then people got security called on them, the police called on them, and I was devastated because I thought the whole time that it was just me that had those isolated things happen to. I didn't realize that so many other people were having those things happen. For me, it got better once I became a medical doctor and I started disclosing that I was a medical doctor. And for a while, I didn't, pretty much because I was scared of anybody reporting back to my job. But when I didn't, I saw how they treated me. You know, when they didn't know who I was, they treated us all terribly, right? But I thought it was that one hospital. I didn't know that across the country, people were experiencing this same thing in even more horrible ways than I had even experienced, right? Mm-hmm. And so it just broke my heart. I think it was just one of those things where I was like, something has got to give. Like, we need to come together. We need to do something. And then I knew of the national guidelines, you know, just because of being in medicine and knowing that there are guidelines for pretty much every disease process. So, you know, I reached for the guidelines and I was like, why is it that we're so far away? Like, the care that we're receiving is so far away. And I realized that talking with people that the doctors really didn't remember the guidelines, or they didn't even know the guidelines. And so that's why people were getting such substandard care. So I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back was a friend of mine who, her kids are adorable. They love my husband. They run and jump in his arms. They come over for dinner. We go to church together. And one day in December in 2020, she went into the hospital and almost did not make it out. And long story short, and she would tell you the story, she tells it publicly, she made it home without her uterus because they waited so long for something that they had neglected in the first place. She had like a little a residual fluid in her uterus, and they saw it. It wasn't anything to do with a pregnancy or anything, but they ignored it because they said, well, she's a sickle cell patient, and, you know, if you take her to the OR, things might go wrong. So let's not take her to the OR. But they never gave her any antibiotics or anything. And so it grew. And so then when it finally got to a point where they couldn't ignore it because she was having fevers and everything, they tried to go in without prepping her with antibiotics, which as a sickle cell patient, you should be pre-treated with antibiotics for a procedure like that. They just went in and tried to release the fluid. And it turns out that whatever, there was an infection or something there, and it just went into her whole body. She became septic. And so her husband called one night. I barely heard the phone, and I shudder every time I think about that fact, because he picked up the phone and he said, I just got put out of the ER. Now, this is a gentle giant of a guy. I just got put out of the ER because I was yelling because my wife was passing out and they weren't paying any attention. I think she's having a stroke. So I call in and they end up getting her, they end up paying attention to her, realizing how bad she was. She gets admitted to the ICU, and then they are deciding that because of our insurance, that they don't want to do too much because nothing will be covered and they won't get paid. So they want to send her home with just outpatient antibiotics for someone who has become septic. And I knew she was going to die, and I was livid. I called them and I was like, not on my watch, you don't. You are not sending a woman home to die and having a dead woman, for a dead mother for Christmas to her 2 little kids. This is what you're giving them for Christmas. And so I ended up forcing them essentially into doing what they were supposed to do, which is go in surgically and see what was going on at this time, because she was septic and we didn't know what was going. And when they went in, they called me from the surgery and said, she looked like she was shot up from the inside. Everything is busted up. And, there was, pus leaking all the way into her belly and all of this stuff. And I'm sitting there like, you have the gall to call me to tell me this when I had to force you to do surgery, and I just, I look back and I'm like, if it wasn't for us staying on top of it and telling them it's their fault, because it was, and that they had to fix it, and they could not send her home, that was not an option, she would have died. And once that happened, I sat down and I wrote out a curriculum, and I was like, I'm gonna have to teach everybody how to navigate. Like, I'm sorry, but like, this can't be happening everywhere. Like, I need to, if the doctors won't pay attention, then I need to teach everybody that's willing to listen, anybody within the sound of my voice that has any ounce of compassion for people who are vulnerable to the healthcare system, like patients with sickle cell disease. If they are willing to come and sit, I will teach them what they need to know to help the patient when they go to the hospital. And that's how it was born.
So I have 2 follow-up questions, and then we'll close out here. But sickle cell medical advocacy, right? Can you just tell us a little bit about why? I've used the term at this point, but I don't think we've explained. Okay, she's from Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy, but she's saying navigator. What's the association?
So we started out by naming the organization Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy because we thought we were going to be advocates, and that's what we named ourselves originally. But when we started calling the hospital, we started getting huge pushback, and we realized that the pushback was because they misunderstood us. They thought we were legal. They thought we were coming to sue them, and so they were running for cover. So they wouldn't talk to us. We were trying to get help for the patient, and they would just put up and start shouting before we even asked anything, and we're like, this is very bizarre. So one day I was talking with a friend, and she said, the cancer patients, they're assigned, their nurses are called navigators. And, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to borrow that term, because if the cancer patients are using it, then the doctors are likely will be more compassionate when they hear that term, because they tend to be more compassionate towards cancer patients, but yet we have a life-threatening illness and they're not as compassionate towards us. So I thought if I borrowed that term, they would, just instinctively, subconsciously, somehow be more compassionate, and it wouldn't send them running. Sure. That's how we changed ourselves from being medical advocate to Sickle Cell Healthcare Navigators. But since I had already, incorporated under Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy, and thousands of dollars later to set up the nonprofit, I decided to keep the name. And it's probably for the better, because patients who are searching for us, they're not going to think to search under navigator. They're going to look for an advocate. So they'll find us, but then when we call the hospital, we'll identify ourselves as navigators.
Makes sense. And so is the Navigator course the only course that you have available?
No. So it started out being the only course, and then patients said, well, we want want to be empowered too. I mean, you're training people to help us, but what about teaching us directly? And I said, okay, but most of the times the patients are, they're sick and then well and sick and then well. So they're not always up to the rigor of the course that I have, for patients that are well and caregivers and volunteers. So I made a different course for them that is self-paced, where they could take their time and learn a lot of the same material plus material that is specific for patients. And they're able to do that at their own pace. We have a platform that allows them to go back and watch the videos and the slides if they miss a class and so on. And so we used to call it something else, but we stopped and decided we wanted to call it what it was. And we're empowering patients. So we call it the Empowered Patient Training.
Empowered Patient Training. I want to make sure that everybody
the Empowered Patient Training.
Okay. All right. We're going to put that on the screen so that everybody can see that.
Sure.
Empowered Patient Training. Okay.
Yes.
So you have the EPT. I'm going to call it EPT.
EPT, yes.
All right. SCMA with EPT. Okay. All right. So you got the EPT. You got the Navigator course. I mean, you're doing some really big things, trying to educate people and not only educate, but inspire, empower, motivate, and get people to understand, hey, sickle cell disease is here and there is something that we can do about it. We may not all have a cure, but if we keep on pushing and we keep on educating, then, while there are changes being done in the federal government, healthcare remains the need of the century, right?
Yes.
We have to take care of each other, and we have to take care of each other the right way.
More so now than ever.
Yes,
now than ever.
It's so interesting that you talked about the origin story of SCMA, because On-Air Sickled was kind of birthed out of the same kind of frustration of, hey, there's all this attention here and all this attention there. And I see news commercials here and there about, different diseases, but I don't hear enough being said about sickle cell, and I don't see that being broadcasted. And so,
yes,
that's kind of where the origin story of On-Air Sickled came from, out of that frustration. I think that, God somehow, gives us a little bit of frustration to give us a little bit of a push,
I believe so. Looking back, I'm like, okay, yeah, he made me mad because he knows when I'm mad, then I act, right?
Yeah,
there's somehow he made us with this sense of justice in us that when we see something wrong, we there's a righteous indignation that kind of comes forth, and we say, okay, this is not right, and I can't look away from I am my brother's keeper. I can't just look away and be okay. I need to make sure that that they're okay, and and so it propels you into action. And one day you look up and you have a whole organization. I didn't plan on having an organization, but I started and I wanted to teach a lot of people, and I didn't have the funds. I put my own funds at first, and then I ran out. And then people said, nobody's going to give you any money unless you start a nonprofit organization. They're not going to give it to an individual. Yeah. They will give it to an organization. I was like, all right, then I'm going to become an organization.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Simone, thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing about the SCMA courses. There's a lot that we can learn if we just take the time to open a book and read, or click on, SCMA and say, you know what, I think I'm going to choose to fight the good fight and come along some Sickle Cell Warriors and be able to, you never know, you might save a life, right? You might save not a life today, but maybe a life tomorrow. And our voice as we started off the show with our commercial, lift every voice, right? Lift every
Right.
voice for the warrior. So, ladies and
Well,
gentlemen,
I want to say one thing. There are a lot of times when people cannot, they may not have they may work and they may not have the time to come on a Sunday evening to take the classes with us. And I would ask them to please support us. Support us financially. Go to www.sicklecellmedicaladvocacy.org. There's a donate button right there that you can share from. And it's not a one-time thing, because unfortunately, and especially in these times that we're living in, we will need support from just the individual when other sources of funding are turning on us, when we have no government support, no government grants. We will need you, people like you. And so whatever you can do to donate. The other day, I was led to speak on the fact that this is a ministry. So tithe to it, if you will, but help in whatever way you can. Help.
Well said. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Simone Ewan, co-founder of Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy and partner of On the Air Sickled. Dr. Simone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put you into the green room. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. You're listening to On the Air Sickled. Listen, if you want to join our show, you can be a guest. You can simply go to www.ontheairsickled.com. Click the share my story link, and one of our team members will get in touch with you as soon as possible, and you can be live on the air. All right. Also, please donate to On the Air Sickled. You can donate to our PayPal at On the Air Sickled OD. All right. Any monetary gift of any kind. As Dr. Simone said, listen, us nonprofit entrepreneurs and executive directors, we are doing the work. You can trust us. You can believe in what we're doing, and you can see it come to fruition. All you have to do is just participate by donating. Participate and donate at On the Air Sickled OD on PayPal. All right. Your donation will support our 3-layered vision. We are seeking continued growth and development, support for sickle cell disease research, development, and education. And we are doing the Flip the Bill campaign. And so just imagine for a second you or your loved one with sickle cell not being able to provide for your family, or not being able to go to work because of the simple fact that you've had a crisis and now you've been admitted into the emergency room and the money is dwindling down because you're paying your medical expenses. So what if there was an organization that would give to you to help support your family, to put food on the table, or to maybe flip the bill and take over your copay for a doctor's appointment, right? Donate to On the Air Sickled. We want to do that. That is our goal, to flip the bill, not just in the medical industry, but in your life personally. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to On the Air Sickled. Thank you so much. I am your host. Please don't miss a single episode of On the Air Sickled. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that notification button so that way you can get your reminders. All right, and as always, please follow along on our social media platforms. Okay, there is Facebook, there's Instagram. We do have a TikTok, so please follow along and see what On the Air Sickled is doing. You will not believe the work that we're doing behind the scenes to come to your community next. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, please be mindful of the weather. All right, it is warmer on the East Coast today. It is a high of 67, low of 34 this evening. Tomorrow's weather will be high of 73 and a low of 43 degrees. Please do not, please do not be fooled by the warm weather. Make sure that you take your medication. If you're on medication, make sure that you're following up with your doctor's appointments. Make sure that you're staying safe and comfortable. Just because it's warm outside doesn't mean that it's not cold inside. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name's OD. This is On the Air Sickled, and you've been listening to this segment called Dr. Simone Says. Be strong and stay well.